Pleasure is not a word I have used often for very many contexts, let alone for activism. Even as I typed the word for this reflection, I realized there was a little tinge of, I'm not sure, wrong, undeserving, shameful. Now, typing the word sacrifice, I felt a familiar energy field around the heart, a kind of warmth and a feeling of love. Sacrifice was about giving of myself, about putting another's needs before my own, even suffering a little for the well-being of another. It was a bit startling to recognize that feeling or seeking a sense of pleasure, or at least using the word, seemed like it was leading to a kind of self-indulgence. In 1997, I was living and working in Nicaragua, and I came up to Berkeley for a sabbatical and worked with Raisa Landman, who Kay Jorgensen used to describe as a Jewish Sufi mystic therapist. I was 35, and I felt compelled to do some inner work to address some things that I kept tripping on and over in my life. After a month or two of working with Raisa, I had a dream where I came upon the statue of the Virgin Mary standing outside a church. It was covered in green mildew. In the dream, I reached out and I scraped some of the mildew off with my finger, and I tasted it. I expected it to be bitter, but instead it was surprisingly sweet tasting. When I shared this dream with Raisa, she reflected back to me that my expectation of taking this time and doing this work on myself was going to be a bitter journey, but rather it was sweet. Maybe I can even say a longed-for, sweet-tasting pleasure. As I think about the dream, it wasn't the work of wanting to clean off the mildew that strikes me, as much as the fact that it was grown over a statue of the Virgin Mary. The image held up to me as a Catholic woman that I was to emulate, pure, chaste, obedient, immaculate, self-sacrificing, and faithful. Mary was the faithful mother of Jesus, and she immaculately conceived him without sin or pleasure. And later, around the 1800s, the church declared a new doctrine that Mary, too, was conceived without sin. And then, of course, comes the doctrine that we were all born into original sin, and we needed to be baptized in order to drive out this sin and become a child of God. We were taught how Mary was faithful and accompanied Jesus in his life and to his death, and he was crucified for his activism, for his challenging the religious and civic systems that really were rooted in sin. We were to give our life for Jesus as he gave his life for us. Fasting and prayer, and even beating one's body, was encouraged. I don't want to dismiss all the teachings that gave form and foundation to my life, but maybe to adjust the lighting a little. For it was the parables and stories of the Judeo-Christian scriptures that grounded my life to work for a more just world. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do justice, love tenderly, and walk humbly. Work so that all may have life and have it to the full. Mary, too, inspired me, a woman who did say yes to life, a woman who bore a great deal, who had a vision of her son being a revolutionary, who would, as she sang in the Magnificat, topple the mighty from their thrones, or who would satisfy the hungry with good things and send the rich away empty. A woman who recognized her son's gifts and encouraged and supported him in what he felt he needed to do. I do value and believe in using my life force for the well-being of others, and I also value and believe that we need to be alive and fully full of love in the struggle. I feel the words of Che Guevara, who said, "At the risk of seeming ridiculous, let me say that the true revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love. It is impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality." When I first saw this quote while eating taquitos in the cafe in Nicaragua, I wrote it down, and for more than 30 years have kept it on my desk or on my altar. Vanessa, I'm grateful for the opportunity to reflect on pleasure as a part of activism. It actually helped me recognize that I've been a bit, maybe even a lot, out of balance in not acknowledging the place, even the requirement of pleasure and joy in the everyday, challenging, justice-seeking work that we do. I am joyfully reminded that what so often inspired me while living in the barrios of Nicaragua and inspire me now living in the Tenderloin community is seeing people who are living the devastating consequences of racism, inequality, greed-centered capitalism turn up the music loud and dance with pure pleasure.